What's the most horrifying crime scene you've ever seen in your life? Heard some screaming, saw some kicking around in a car, blood was everywhere. I helped a lady give birth with an ambulance present. Saw a starving man collecting cigarette butts. I heard his story. I bought him food and we shared stories. It was 1 a.m. and 20 degrees. I took him to hospital because his feet were numb. Saved him from frostbite and hypothermia. Saw a swerving SUV approach a ditch. Female got out and ran to the bridge. Tried to make a shitty noose. I talked her out of killing herself. Some girl flags me down at a gas station. Says her friend needs help in hotel room. I follow and get rescue to stand by. Bare naked girl handcuffed to bed. They have no key. I keyed her while embarrassed BF watched. Car drove by no lights. Rammed a gate to water tower area. Drunk teen was arrested. Later admitted to wanting to poison the water reservoir to kill his ex. He would not have succeeded since he had no poison. I saw fire under car. Pulled them over. Rushed up and pulled everyone from car. Helped take kids out of the back. They were dragging a mattress they ran over. Heard gunshots. Went to area. Saw shot kid and frantic witnesses pointing. I drove to their points and saw a guy jogging. Commanded him to stop. Placed into handcuffs. Was the murderer. I have hundreds more, literally. Edit for more stories I can think of that fit the op question. Frantic middle-aged lady with several kids in car waved me down one morning when I was going home. She told me a bomb was put outside her garage. I have her wait somewhere and check out her place. Find a fire extinguisher with a Coke bottle duct taped to it. Closer inspection reveals destroyed Coke bottle and was probably filled with dry ice. I suspected friends of her kids. I patrolled a neighborhood I never went through before, completely by random decision as I passed it. Saw a flash of skin run across the roadway. I chased a naked guy to a playground where he tried to hide in sand. Confessed that he was a minister for some shitty small church. He was booked that night. I called the church in the morning. They seemed to not care. I posted about it on FB and linked the public records from the courthouse as proof. Local news had fun with it. Flagged down by a schizoaffective individual once. Claimed he had been abducted by aliens, had zero identity but was in a panic so rescue checked him out. He told them the same info that didn't register through the state's MVD or any of our reports. While he's in the van another officer arrives with a fingerprint scanner. We find he is not in any database we have access to. Now we assume he just did substances or something. Gave me an address to tell his family what hospital he will be at. Described the cars and driveway. It's across town so I hit it up hours later on my way home. Described cars are present. Knock on door. People have no idea who he is. I described him and everything. Nope. I just left. Never saw him again. Lol. Had to help the county with calls one night because they had a major incident that tied up all their people. I am not used to taking calls without addresses. There was one with directions like turn right at barn, go past rusted truck, etc. I follow the directions to contact a person about a simple theft that occurred at their work or something. I go to the wrong house and interrupt a barbecue. It was like 2 a.m. I stop at a skate park with problems to do my reports and be present so no one shoots each other. Kid gets shot anyway. I heard a soft, muffled pop. I was like nah, that's not a gunshot. Moment later kids rush to my car pointing to the park. Find a non-skater type, jackass thug, inside one of the deep bowls. Blood smeared on some areas of the concrete. He couldn't get out because he shot himself in the leg while putting his gun in his pocket. He got a ticket for negligent use, $150. But he got another bill from the ambulance. $1,500. I would prefer the misdemeanor ticket myself. I heard screaming from a parking lot one night. I see a man and woman fighting. I observe for a moment and wait to intervene. The woman is definitely instigating and throwing all the blows. The male is backing away and telling her to stop, but she is yelling help and for someone to call the cops. Vape, here I am. I arrested her for domestic violence. Guarantee if people called police for her they would give me false testimony. Yeah, she was the one needing help. He was hurting her. Blah blah. Glad I witnessed it myself. On my way to the jail, outside of the city, one night I saw 3 pickup trucks on the side of the road. I drove closer and nearly choked in surprise. About 5 guys, 3 with rifles, stood on the side of the road looking into a ravine. I could have sworn they were murdering someone. I honked my air horn from afar, ready to gas it out of there, since I have a prisoner who is my liability. The guys all drop their guns and walk to the road. I get out, ready to draw down, but feel like they're respecting me at this point. One guy approaches. As he does, I hear death cries coming from the ravine. He tells me one of their cows got loose and fell into the ravine and broke its legs. It had been there for a few days before they found it. I nodded and blocked traffic while they put the poor girl down. I was called to a hotel to check on a room who was getting frequent guests not registered. The manager also did some Googling of the registered person's name. It was a 19-year-old college girl, pleasant looking, well-mannered on her FB page, nice looking family, had a back page listing for an escort service, was in college for biology, drove a brand new Tacoma. TRD mind you. Manager wants me to remove any other guests in her room. I knock on door, she answers in a robe. I explain the manager's suspicion. She laughs and says she's from out of town, just visiting a friend and he came over a few times to say hi. She allows me to do a quick look inside her room for guests. I come out of the bathroom and notice she closed the door and dropped the robe. She is completely naked and looks pretty good. She says can stay and chat a while? Or something like that. Cannot remember exactly as this was 2013-14. I declined and left. I have really haunting, terrible scenes I have been to as well, some of which were on national news. So it's not all fun and games. Bodies cut up into pieces, people hung, Heads blow up with shot blasts, lots of sewer slides, lots of burgers, lots of car wrecks and mayhem. Sadness that has caused this cool guy some PTSD, mostly nightmares, and the occasional sad day. But I live for the happy moments, the fun times in the job, the people whose lives I actually save, the smiles and handshakes. There have been quite a few that are alive because of me. I know if it wasn't me, it would be another cop from my department. But still, it was me, and it makes me smile. What exact moment did you realize it was the beginning of the end of your relationship with your significant other? It should have been in October of 2014, but it wasn't. That was the Wednesday before we were supposed to leave for our church fall retreat with our 2 kids, almost 6 and 2 at the time. My mom called and asked me to come to her house straight from work. She was holding it together on the phone, but it sounded serious. I went over immediately and she told me they did an MRI to figure out what was going on with the pain in her hip, a problem she had been struggling with since March. They sent her directly back to the doctor because they had found a tumor in said hip and, even more concerning, one in the opposite femur that was about to cause a pathological break. The doctor mentioned the possibility of bone cancer. Surgery would be scheduled for probably the next week to stabilize the femur, and more tests would be needed. My ex was concerned and all, I guess, but made it clear she still wanted to go away for the weekend on the church retreat. I let the fear of an argument, sense of obligation, and guilt over disappointing her totally override everything inside of me that screamed to stay back and be with my mom in what was an incredibly terrifying and uncertain time. While we were gone for the weekend, the pain for my mom spiked so badly my aunt had to call the ambulance to take her to the hospital. They did emergency surgery to put a rod in the femur. She was in terrible pain and I knew I was one of the only people she trusted while on pain meds. But there I sat, 3.5 hours away in the mountains. There are people with her, and she's being taken care of. There's nothing we can do for my ex. So we stayed at the church retreat. They did more tests at the hospital, finding a tumor on the pancreas. I got that call from my cousin, who had driven in from the next state over, while we were making our way back once the retreat was over. I lost it a little bit, but had to clamp it down so I didn't scare the kids. At least I was there to sit with her while they did the whole body scan. Very painful for her to lay in that position so long, and was there for the final diagnosis, aggressive lymphoblastic B-cell lymphoma. Almost unheard of in a woman her age, and her doctor had to fight for her to get more than just palliative care. She was transferred to a local cancer center well known for its expertise. It should have been a few months later, in early 2015, but it wasn't. My mom was going through a 6-month course of intensive inpatient chemotherapy, 3 days of being chemically cooked from the inside at the hospital, then a few weeks at home to recover before going back for the next round. It was hell for her, both at the hospital and back home trying to recover. At one point, she had asked if I would come by the hospital to sit with her. I was planning to, as I had at various other times during treatment, but for that evening I needed to confirm with my ex that she would be okay with taking care of the kids. Can't your sister go be with her? Why can't she step up? My mom was quite possibly going to die, either from the cancer itself or the aggressiveness of the only possible treatment. And my ex was well aware of her general fear of being alone in the hospital, though my mom was managing around that pretty well as long as there were no treatments or procedures happening. She just wanted her oldest daughter to come sit with her, and I wanted to spend some time with my mom. But that meant my ex would have to take care of the 2 kids on her own, and therefore the questioning from my ex. It should have been in October of 2016. But again, it wasn't. We had originally planned a Disney vacation with the kids for October 2015 and had planned to take my mom. When she got sick and went through treatment, we postponed the trip by a year so my mom would be able to build up her strength and stamina to enjoy the trip with us. So, in October of 2016, the 5 of us happily flew down to Florida to enjoy a week of magic and fun. Only, my ex and I argued most of the week. When it became clear that my mom's endurance still wasn't quite where it needed to be, we rented a personal motorized scooter for her to use for the week. This complicated transportation to the parks, and some of the logistics within the parks themselves. And unfortunately, due to my mom having to completely rebuild her immune system, she also came down with a cold and wasn't feeling very well for much of the trip. Can't she just go back to her room and rest? So that we could just continue on our own vacation unhindered, I guess. There were many other smaller moments, some involving my mom, and many not, that should have made me stop short and say wait, what? But they didn't. In retrospect, I think it was October 2017. My ex tried to armchair diagnose a psychological problem between me and my mom. She presented me with the printout of an article that went into detail about something called the mother injury, apparently caused when a mother puts too much responsibility on her child and treats that child as her friend. It went on to talk about the child who later as an adult feels too much of a sense of obligation to the parent, etc. etc. I need to specify that I did not in any way relate to 95% of what this article talked about. My ex had woven elements of my youth into a narrative that she was trying to use to drive me and my mom apart with some quack article she had printed off the internet. I say quack because the article source did not appear even the least bit academic. Since that time in 2017, I have seen more material and content come out about the mother wound, but I have to say that the article my ex shared had a very specific characterization and spin to it that she was clearly trying to use to manipulate me. I didn't want it to be that moment, and still fought against it with all I could. I declared that we had to go back to couples therapy, something we had done a few years prior and clearly needed to pick up again. My ex had been in therapy for some time for her own reasons, and I also declared I was going to seek out an individual therapist for me. In my own mind, I really needed a sanity check about everything I seemed to be experiencing. We spent 6 months in marriage counseling, and her consistent complaint was to ask why the therapist, remember, a neutral third party, mental health clinician, seemed to always be focusing on her behaviors. I eventually realized we were not going to make it as a couple, and did the thing I never thought I'd do, initiated separation. I'm so happy that my ex-wife is miserable. 3 years ago I 48 meters, found out my wife, 46F, was having an affair. She met a guy at work and came home one day telling me she was in love with him, no longer loved me and wanted a divorce. This was a guy she'd only known for 3 months at the time. She and I had been together since we were in our 20s. We have 3 kids, 28 meters, 26 meters and 23F. Well, I tried to fight for my marriage and didn't want a divorce, but she simply would not stop seeing this guy. After one weekend where she disappeared from Friday afternoon to Sunday night, I ended up throwing her out of the house. She immediately moved in with this guy. The only excuse she ever gave me was, I never wanted to hurt you, but there's just something about this guy, and I deserve to be happy. That was it. That was the depth of her reasoning for throwing everything we built together away. We ended up finalizing our divorce in early 2022. Although I had very hard feelings toward her, I faked it enough to get pretty favorable divorce terms from her. It seemed she was so eager to be with her dream man that she didn't have time for a long divorce. So in the end I got to keep my pension and the house, which I had bought from my grandmother. I did have to give her half of my 401k, however. The effect on our kids was pretty devastating. All 3 of them took it very hard. My oldest son told her that if she chose this man he'd never have a relationship with her again. As of right now, neither of our sons has a relationship with their mother. Our daughter does talk to her from time to time, but their relationship is very strained to say the least. My daughter is a very kind person and she tries, but she usually ends her conversations with her mother even more upset than when they started. About 4 months after the divorce, my ex contacted me out of the blue. She told me she had made a terrible mistake and asked if she could come home. Her dream man turned out to be an alcoholic who she says is verbally abusive and wasted all of her money. I used this opportunity to tell her exactly what I thought of her as a person, a wife and a mother. I told her this was her life now and to deal with it. I told her she no longer had a home at this house and to never contact me again. Then a few things happened over the last year that have driven her to start trying to contact me again. First off, I met someone. My sister introduced me to a friend of hers who is also divorced, and she and I hit it off. We've been seeing each other since last summer, and while we've agreed that neither of us wants to get married again, we are together. Once my ex heard about this, she once again tried to contact me, but I ignored her. My son also got married and didn't invite his mother. She again contacted me to try to get me to intervene on her behalf. I told her I would talk to him, but I never did. Secretly, I feel like she deserves all the pain she's feeling when it comes to our kids. She destroyed our family without so much as an afterthought. Too bad, so sad. Now she recently told our daughter that she finally broke it off with the dream man because she could take his drinking and total lack of responsibility. He wasted her half of the 401k that I had to give her. He also totaled her car driving drunk. This from a man in his 40s. Again, she knew this guy for 3 months and torpedoed our whole family for him. On the face of it, I act like I feel sorry for her, but inside I really delight in the fact that she's so unhappy. Call me evil or whatever, I don't care. She brought this on herself and it serves her right. I actually had to sit there one Saturday night while she got ready for a date with this guy and laughed on the phone with her friend about how awkward our living situation was. I lived in hell for over a year because of her. Wait until she finds out our son and his wife are going to have a baby later this year. Maybe if she had been able to keep her legs closed, she'd get to meet her grandchild. Enjoy your shitty 1-bedroom apartment and your broken down used car. Me and my new partner will think of you when we're on vacation in Hawaii this summer. Hawaii was the trip my ex and I always planned to take once our daughter finished college. Maybe I'll send her pictures.